It's now time for the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and the MikeWagnerShow.com. Mike brings you great guests and interesting people from all across the globe. So sit back, relax, and enjoy another great episode of the Mike Wagner Show.
Hey everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking for a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition rate. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, Apple, and more. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with a wonderful gentleman with us who is the author of Mind to Matter, Scientific Evidence for Mind Changing, which is published by the Hay House, and also specialist in turning thoughts to things, and of course links between mental state and ability to create mental reality. And of course he's also got some books out besides Mind to Matter, which is Bliss Brain, and also he's did work through EFT Universe, and also founded the National Institute for Integrative Healthcare, and we'll talk about that. And of course another book we'll talk about, YourGeniusGene.com. And here he is, the genius himself, ladies and gentlemen, live from the studios. And yeah, he's laughing about it, Dr. Dr. Dawson. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Well, it's good to be here. And Mike, there are days I feel like a genius, and there are days when I don't, just like all the rest of us. So it comes and goes.
Exactly. I mean, exactly. I guess it's just like we're humans. Like some days you're the wiper and some days you're the bug. And of course, you just got to roll with the punches, they say. So
one of the cool things actually is that meditation studies show that actually as you meditate, as you become stable in the kinds of elevated emotional states of meditation, your IQ improves a lot in terms of what you can do. So actually one of the fastest ways to improve IQ is stress reduction. So there really is a link between being a genius and reducing your stress.
That's interesting. I guess on a days I got to chill out to something like this, I can actually raise my IQ. And of course, can you also raise your IQ through coffee?
Well, I have to confess, I have a 2-cup quota every day. So I get up in the morning around 5:30. I go to the coffee maker and make coffee and then meditate for an hour. So for me, it's always caffeine-fueled meditation.
That is up my alley, gotta say that, and throw in some chocolate too. So, so you're the author of Mind to Matter, and also you're also the founder of the National Institute for Integrative Health. You also went to Baylor University, and of course you're also part of the Energy Psychology Group, and you also quite a few books as well too. And before we get into all that, especially about your new book, Mind to Matter, tell us how you got started.
Well, I really wanted solutions to my personal problems. And if you look at most people who went into spirituality or psychology professionally, you'll find that usually they were motivated either by the suffering that they were experiencing or the suffering of others. And when I was a teenager, when I was a young child, earlier than that, I was just so depressed, so anxious. I had a lot of difficult things happen in my childhood. I wound up with what we would now call PTSD. And I wanted to fix myself. I knew I was unhappy. Virtually everyone I knew around me was unhappy as well. And my father was a minister. So these people were in the church, and they were clergy, they were deacons, they were priests, and yet they were still not happy. And so I then got into psychology, and I discovered most people in psychology are not happy, and many people in psychology are crazier than the people they're treating. So I tried various approaches over the years, and I got better bit by bit by bit. I went to live on a spiritual community when I was 15 years old. So at 15, I was learning to do energy healing and meditate and learning spiritual skills. And I got better little by little over the next 10, 20, 30 years. But then I made a commitment to meditate every single day of my life. And I did that when I was 45 years old. That was 20 years ago. And that was the leverage point where everything changed. Suddenly, my energy medicine practices just had a lot more effectiveness than they had before. I was getting into deeper and deeper states. I went from being that unhappy person or moderately happy person by then to a really super happy person. And that's when I began to look at the whole idea of writing a book on how our brains literally are shaping the reality around us. That's where Mind to Matter came from. My earlier book 20 years ago was called The Genie in Your Genes, all about epigenetics, how our thoughts, our emotions, our spiritual experiences literally change gene expression. And I've done myself personally, I've done over 20 clinical trials, and I've been involved with over 100 clinical trials in one way or another. And several of these show that as you think, as you feel, as you experience, you are literally changing genes on and off in your body. So I think we're at this amazing, remarkable trajectory in human history where we can measure things like gene expression, stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, and we can see exactly what's going on in the body. And what we're finding is that these practices like meditation, like acupressure, have a dramatic effect at the genetic level and in terms of your health and longevity. So that's kind of a 5-minute quick history of all the way from there to here.
Wow, that's amazing. And you said your father was a minister. And what church was he a minister of? And what was the affiliation? Like, say, was it Catholic, Lutheran, or Episcopalian, or what was the name of the church and what affiliation?
Initially, he was a Baptist, but eventually he found himself more comfortable in the Episcopal Church, or what is called in England the Anglican Church. So he wound up there.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. I was just trying to get the gist of it. And what was the one moment that influenced you into saying that, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write books and, whatever else. What was that one aha moment that says, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? Like that one particular moment.
I had a long career in book publishing. I wasn't involved in writing books. I wasn't an author. And then as I began to use these tools in my own life, I became motivated to share them with others. I also, Mike, saw people suffering so dreadfully. Like, for example, after America intervened in Iraq, first of all in Afghanistan and in Iraq in 2002, we saw this whole cohort wave of young American men and women coming back from those wars with PTSD. And we saw suicide rates rising. We saw domestic violence rates rising. We saw anxiety and depression, drug abuse, all kinds of problems rising. At one point, back in the 80s, a study found that the majority of people in prison in the U.S. that time were Vietnam veterans. And so the social consequences of PTSD are just terrible. And so that motivated me highly. That's one of the reasons I started the nonprofit, was to get these evidence-based therapies to veterans. And actually, after 10 years of work, eventually we were approved in 2017 as an evidence-based therapy by the Veterans Administration. By that point, though, we had treated over 20,000 veterans privately outside of the VA. And so I am so moved by the suffering of people that are, whose lives are shaped by trauma. And so that motivates me. I want people, there are ways which you might suffer just as a result of random accidents, but there are so many ways in which we suffer because of our thoughts, our mind, our background, our beliefs. And those ways we can change, we can cure those things. There's so much curable suffering out there. And that's really what I'm about, what my training organization, EFT Universe, is all about, what the nonprofit is all about, what my personal commitment is to affecting the lives of millions of people through books, through science, through studies, and showing people you can radically change your brain, you can radically change your life, and release all that suffering that is so holding you back.
You also talked about I forget something based therapy, the behavioral therapy, and I'm trying to remember what the E word stood for. What are some of the other therapy you guys use as well too with your clients?
So in Mind to Matter, I talk about the commonalities of all of these therapies, and there are about 30 of them I mentioned in Mind to Matter. And so of those 30, the two I personally practice, teach, and think are vital is one is meditation, and the second one is called EFT, emotional freedom techniques, or tapping, because in tapping you tap like this on acupressure points. So it's like all the acupuncture meridians of your body, but you're applying pressure to them rather than needles. And so research, again, over 100 clinical trials show that EFT is extremely effective for anxiety, depression, PTSD, physical pain, and autoimmune diseases. So those are the two things that I teach and practice myself.
And also get to more of your book in just a minute. But first, listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs at below the competition way. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention The Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on themikewagnershow.com. You can check our Facebook page at facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Also on Anchor FM, Radio Public, iTunes, Google Play, Apple, and more. Take The Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to The Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also follow The Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with Dr. Dawson Church, the author of Mind to Matter, here on The Mike Wagner Show, book publisher, and he's also headed up Energy Psychology Group, National Institute for the Integrative Healthcare, and also just a couple of things, what inspired you to start up the National Institute for Integrative Healthcare, and, just tell more people about the organization.
Our main focus is on research and also implementation and offering this to veterans. So we do a lot of scientific research. We publish a journal. We encourage people who are doing research into these stress reduction methods. And then through the Veteran Stress Project, our other main initiative, we offer free EFT to veterans. And typically people come into our program, they've been affected by the war, maybe as long as the Vietnam War, perhaps one of the more recent wars. And so we give them 6 free EFT sessions. We've also helped with 7 clinical trials of EFT, randomized controlled trials, that show that after 6 sessions, people are generally free of symptoms like flashbacks and nightmares, intrusive thoughts, hypervigilance, and all the other symptoms of PTSD. So our one focus is research. Our second focus is on implementing that in the social project called the Veteran Stress Project. And that's the one that's treated over 20,000 veterans in the last 10 plus years.
Wow, that is amazing. And of course, you think about PTSD, and it's been very common. And of course, you studied on the brain, the matter, and impulses, and also the biology. It makes me think. And what do you think that first thing that causes PTSD, like say, like some event, or maybe just one precise moment, like what really just sets someone off when it comes to PTSD?
That's a good question, Mike. And there are 2 broad categories of PTSD. One is single incident PTSD. And so think about the person who has a car crash when they're 25 years old and it's a life-shattering event. So we're doing okay in their lives, 25 years old, they have this car crash, and it really makes them, it really traumatizes them. That's single incident PTSD or simple PTSD. Complex PTSD, if like one man I worked with once, he was beaten repeatedly by his father. His father beat him dozens of times. And one day, I tell the story in one of my books, one day on his 8th birthday, his father hit him so hard that he broke the boy's jaw. So here we have multiple events over many, many years. That's complex PTSD. And the brain is being formed during that time. When you're 0, a year old, year and a half old, 2 years old, the fastest growing part of the brain is the emotional midbrain or limbic system, and that's what processes memory and learning. So here you are learning at this fundamental level of neurobiology, as your brain's being hardwired, you are learning that the world is an unsafe place, that the people you love also hurt you, that the world is unpredictable, you can't trust people. And that kind of PTSD is extremely difficult to treat with any kind of psychological approach because it's not formed at the level of ideas, not formed at the level of recent memories. It's formed at the level of fundamental brain wiring. So that's why we certify people in what we call clinical EFT, because you need really thorough and deep tools to handle that kind of PTSD. But typically it's caused either by a single adult event, or it's a series of childhood events, and that's complex PTSD or developmental PTSD, which again is really hard to work on. So we train our practitioners, for example, to work on things like prenatal trauma. What happens if your parents were stressed and your mother had high levels of cortisol and adrenaline, and those were going through into the amniotic fluid or through the placenta into your bloodstream when you were in the womb. And we find people are literally learning the biochemistry of stress at the cellular level, and they're only in the womb. So how do you deal with that kind of trauma? And for that, you need very specialized and effective tools.
Wow, I did not know that the stress comes from the mother itself while the baby is developing. I did not know that. Wow.
It does, it happens. And certain things can cross that barrier and get into the baby's bloodstream. Other things can't, but stress hormones definitely can. And there are sonograms, for example, you can find online that show the mother and father are having a screaming argument, and the baby is jerking in the womb at 15, 18 weeks old in stress at the parent's external stress.
Mm-hmm. And could also like sound frequencies, vibration frequencies, and other frequencies can also affect the baby being developed as well?
Somewhat, although the fluid and the protective barrier of the woman's body tends to filter out most of those influences. But certain, really loud sounds or harsh sounds, could also traumatize the child.
And also it can also treat health issues as well too. You work with PTSD and also working with what you talked about, like with children being affected by the amniotic fluid, but other health issues as well too, like say what's going on right now with the current pandemic, the COVID-19, and also the recent riots as well too. That's going on.
Yeah, I did 2 studies a few years back, and I had been doing a lot of research on cortisol. And cortisol is a master hormone that triggers a lot of other hormones, a lot of gene expression. And generally speaking, when your cortisol levels rise, when you're stressed and you have high cortisol, your cortisol goes up, you feel that tension, you feel that anxiety in your body as a physical feeling. And it depletes a whole bunch of really good biochemicals. And the main one it depletes is DHEA, your main cell repair hormone. So stressed people age faster, sometimes much faster than unstressed people. And so I was doing studies, some of them were randomized controlled trials, and they were looking at cortisol levels. And we found that as people used EFT acupressure, their levels of cortisol dropped really fast, much faster than any other kind of technique. So I then thought, well, what's happening with antibodies? Because antibodies are what our bodies use to fight off viruses and bacteria, especially viruses. And so, for example, coronaviruses have these protein spikes sticking out of them that are like these teardrop shape or club shaped protrusions that come out of the coronavirus. And those are what sticks to the cell wall of the cell that the coronavirus is attacking. And then that's how the coronavirus gets in there, attacks the cell, takes it over, and replicates itself. So I did 2 studies with a really wonderful group of colleagues. And we looked at these antibodies, and what these antibodies do is they interfere with the process. They bind to the spikes on a coronavirus, and once they bound to that spike, the spike cannot stick to the cell wall, cannot infect you. And if you have more of these antibodies, your immune system is functioning better. So we measured in these 2 studies not just cortisol, where the cortisol went up or down. We also measured immunoglobulins, and we found found in the course of 1 week of people doing an intensive retreat, tapping, meditating, doing these stress reduction practices in 1 week, their cortisol, their baseline of cortisol dropped by 37%, and their levels of immunoglobulins rose by 113%. That's a doubling of antibodies that protect you against coronaviruses. And there are lots of them. I mean, there are 100 coronaviruses, more than 100. There are 7 that affect human beings. And the one that causes COVID-19 is just one of those 7. But generally speaking, if you have a lot of antibodies, your mucous membranes, your skin is much better equipped to fend off those invaders than if you have low amounts of those antibodies.
Wow, that is amazing. And maybe that'll convince people not to take the vaccine, simply meditate, chill out, de-stress, and I guess that'll take care of corona, if I'm right.
Well, you think about, for example, a classroom. There's a school classroom, 30 kids in the classroom, and it's flu season. And they're the ones that are sick, they're coughing, they're just oozing viruses all over the place. And there are 2 coronaviruses, actually, that cause colds. And so other kids, some of the kids, but again, all 30 kids are exposed to this environment, with a few kids who have a severe infectious disease, highly contagious disease. And you find that maybe 10 of the kids get sick and 20 don't. What's the difference between the 10 who do get sick and the 20 who don't? And the answer is it's the strength of their immune system. So if you have a good immune system, that's why young people are much less at risk for the coronavirus than old people, because with old people, our immune systems are not functioning at peak. So there are all these ways of boosting your immune system naturally, and that's really what you want to do. Whether or not you get the vaccine, do everything you can right now to boost your immunity. Meditate, tap, spend time in nature, eat clean food, drink high-quality water. Well, all these are just really simple ways of doing it. But again, in that one clinical trial, just 1 week of doing this intensively, more than doubled your levels of antibodies. So there is a lot we can do for our own health. And a lot of the public health discourse now. I mean, has anybody talked yet once that you've heard about meditation, raising antibodies? And this is all people's radar. And I really want to put it on people's radar because it's something we can do ourselves. It doesn't require a doctor. It doesn't require a hospital. It doesn't require an antidote. We just can do this simple thing called meditate and see our immune systems improve.
And of course, they say laughter is the best medicine as well. Yes.
Laughter definitely helps too.
And I'm feeling better already. We'll talk about your book in just a minute, but first listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com. It's powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at SonicWebStudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget, Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@SonicWebStudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. You can check our Facebook page at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can download and listen on Facebook, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, over 25 podcast platforms. Take the Mike Wagner Show with you on any mobile device. Subscribe to the Mike Wagner Show on the YouTube channel. Also, follow the Mike Wagner Show on Instagram and Twitter today. We're here with Dr. Dawson Church, author of Mind to Matter, here on the Mike Wagner Show, just talking about some of the things you can do with the brain, talking about some of the health issues, and talking about his experience overall, and a big difference he's making right now. Let's get to your book, Mind to Matter, Scientific Evidence for Mind Changing, and also how your brain creates material reality. And tell us more about the book.
Mind to Matter was really a fun project for me to write, Mike. And you've heard this term, your thoughts create your reality. The Buddha said your thoughts create your reality 2,000 years ago. In the Proverbs in the Bible, it says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And so great. Emerson and Thoreau talked about that. Many people throughout history have talked about your thoughts creating your reality. Gandhi talked about it as well. So I thought, well, these are all philosophers. These are all religious people, spiritual people. But let's take a really hard scientific look at whether or not that's true. And so what I set out to do with Mind to Matter is I thought there are a lot of links in the chain between me having a thought and a thing manifesting. So I want to look at every single link in the chain and see how many links science can prove and which ones it can't prove. And what I expected to find was that science would show that, oh, we've got this link here, we have 3 or 4 links here, there's some big gaps over here, and then eventually we have some more links at the end. What I found, to my amazement, was that science can show every single link in the causal chain between thought and thing. And in some ways, this is really obvious. Obviously, if I am doing negative thinking, if I'm stressed, if I'm angry, if I'm anxious, if I have negative emotions, I'm making cortisol. I'm making cortisol molecules. I'm turning on a gene called CYP B1A that is the final link in the chain that makes cortisol. I'm literally turning on a gene in my body using thought, by having a stressful thought. So there are lots of examples of how we make molecules in our body. We can make molecules of bliss. The bliss molecule is called anandamide, and we make lots and lots of it if we meditate. So clearly we're making molecules in our body. And the whole first half of my book, Mind to Matter, is the amazing molecules you can make in your body by thought. For example, when you meditate and you get into very deep states, your brain is in delta and theta, and those are the frequencies that it drops into. So normally in everyday life, you're in beta. When you get relaxed, you drop into alpha, slower wave. Then in sleep, you're in theta and delta. But in meditation, you're also in theta and delta. And it turns out that theta is able to do things like signal your cells to repair your DNA. It signals your neural pathways in your brain, your neurons, to strengthen the insulating sheaths around them to conduct neural signals better. Turns out that delta, your slowest brain wave, is able to spark the production of stem cells in your body. So you're meditating over here, and we talk about stem cell research and how important stem cells are and how we need to get stem cells and inject them in people who need stem cells, but you can literally increase the stem cells in your body simply by deep meditation, by these theta and delta waves. It looks something like that your brain is in these states generating theta and delta, and that's like a signal to your body, hey, go make stem cells, go make, and the other one is that we make is telomeres. And telomeres are your main anti-aging molecule. They are these special molecules at the ends of chromosomes, and the more of them you have, the slower you age. And those same slow frequencies spark the production of telomeres. So our bodies are sensitive to all of these micro signals that our brains put out there, and the effects on our health are dramatic. So those are all examples which I have in the book in great detail about how thinking, emotional, spiritual states are affecting the environment inside our body, genetically and hormonally. But the cool thing was when I began to look for research, and I had no idea this stuff was out there, on how our brains affect the world out there.
Wow.
And and here's one of many examples. Everyone knows with the structure of water, it's H2O. So everyone knows that, 2 hydrogen atoms bonded to 1 oxygen atom, that's H2O, that's water. But what people aren't really aware of is that if you're a chemist, you'll know that the bonding angle, the angle at which those 3 atoms bond, is 104 degrees. And that's just a chemical fact. It always bonds at 104 degrees. It's just one of those laws of chemistry. The bonding angle of H2O is 104 degrees. If you give that water to a healing touch practitioner, and that healing touch practitioner holds his or her hands over it and infuses that water with healing intention, that bonding angle changes. It's literally without any human touch. They measure that with a thing called a spectroscope, and that bonding angle literally changes. When you then take that water that's been blessed by a healer or that has been infused with healing intention, and you water seeds with it, the plants that result grow faster and thicker and have more chlorophyll in them. They're healthier than plants with untreated water. So our thoughts are literally changing the chemical composition of the water around us. And our bodies are 70% water. We exist in an atmosphere that's in which water is crucial. The planet is 70% water on the surface. And so we can literally change the molecular structure of things like water with this thing behind our eyes.
So in other words, instead of drinking water at 90 degrees, we have to drink what, at 104 degrees now? Is that what you're saying? Oh, I'm having a hard time doing 104. I've been drinking the water at a 90-degree angle all my life, sometimes at 45.
So, yeah, and then there are stories of people who could affect all four of the four fundamental forces of physics in mind to matter. So it's just remarkable that we now realize we have immense creative effects on the world around us. And intention, synchronicity. There's stories in the book about people who just had an intention of healing themselves or of making money or of seeing some result. Like there was one cute story in the book is there's a lab at MIT. I talked to the woman who runs this lab, and one of the things that students have to do in this lab is they have to precipitate sodium crystals out of a supersaturated solution, and it's a really difficult thing to do in chemistry. So they're trained to do this. It takes them a lot of attempts to maybe one day do it. So they train in this. And so this lab director told me, he said, I just train people to do this, but it's hard for me to precipitate the sodium crystals out of there. And it's hard for me to train people to do it. Some can, some can't. It may take many attempts. But she said there was this one young man that arrived there as a lab assistant, and he just, in his very first day, he knew that we were supposed to do this as part of the routine at the lab, is to precipitate these crystals. So he just took that solution and he precipitated the crystals. And I said to him, how did you do that? He said, well, I know you're supposed to do that here at the lab. And she said, yeah, but it's hard. And he said, oh, really? I didn't know that. So she said, will you do it again? And he did it again. He could just do it instantly. He hadn't got the memo. It was hard. And so much of our lives, we're thinking it's going to be hard to do this. It'll be difficult. It'll be complicated. It'll be expensive. It'll be overwhelming. But we can change the material world around us in all kinds of wonderful ways. So I really encourage people to let go of the limitations and see just what their minds can do.
It sounds amazing, too. And I was going to get to the part about the money. You said there's like a chemical that can release if you want to make money. What exactly is the chemical in your body? Like, say, I want to make some money. I want to make $1 million or something like that. Don't play the lottery. How can I make $1 million? What's the chemical that can actually say, hey, you can make money? What's that chemical in our body?
Well, what I recommend people do is become drug dealers. That's a really good way, because what I talk about in great detail there is drugs, especially cocaine and THC. So THC is THC works. It's the active ingredient in marijuana. So THC is what makes you high when you smoke marijuana, and it docks with certain locations in your synapses in your brain and gives you that feeling of euphoria. But it turns out that there is a natural chemical released in your brain during deep meditation called anandamide, with the same chemical structure as THC, which docks with those same receptor sites and makes you feel high. In fact, it was discovered in 1996, and they called it anandamide because ananda is the Sanskrit word for bliss. It makes people feel totally blissed out. So you literally are able to create these blissful feelings in your brain and these neurochemicals by meditation. Another one that is really the kind of the foundation of addictions is in cocaine, alcoholism, is dopamine. People want that dopamine rush, and things like cocaine activate the dopamine reward system in your brain. But it turns out that if you meditate deeply, you get a flood of dopamine, you get a flood of serotonin. Serotonin is this feel-good neurochemical. So dopamine gives you motivation. Dopamine gives you energy. Dopamine is goal-driven. Serotonin is satisfaction. And so serotonin is the same chemical composition as psilocybin in magic mushrooms. And so when you do this deep meditation, which I show you how to do in Mind to Matter, you're generating dopamine, you're generating anandamide, you're generating serotonin, and so you are totally high. Not only that, you finish your meditation and go out and do your work in the world, and research shows that people in these flow states that we induce like that, they have 5 times the productivity of when they aren't in flow. So imagine being 5 times as productive. Imagine getting done on Monday what used to take you Monday through Friday to do. So that's why this is your huge leverage over prosperity. People who do this deep meditation are able to be in those flow states. They're 5 times as productive. According to another really ambitious study, they're 490% more likely to solve complex problems. So when you're looking at that investment table and trying to decide which stock to invest in, the airlines are down now. Do I buy them? Do I sell them? What do I do? You are much, much wiser, far more productive when you're in these states. So it's not just the gateway to better health, it is the gateway to increased prosperity as well.
That is fantastic. And where can we find this book?
mindtomatter.com. And actually, right now, we're doing a giveaway. So we just give you a copy of the book if you pay shipping and handling. And there are a whole bunch of other things there. We have a monthly program where you can get on a call with me every month and get downloads and meditations every month and actually work on all these manifestational skills. But just mindtomatter.com is where you go to get the book. Go to mindtomatter.com. You get a free copy of the book there, pay for shipping and handling. We'll ship the book out to you. And start to play with this stuff. I mean, just start to read what this can do for you, because it's not just science. There are about 100 stories in the book of people who, like one woman who healed herself. She had metastasized breast cancer. It metastasized to her lymph nodes, and she began to practice meditation. She began to do qigong, did all this energy healing, and 2 months later, her lymph nodes were clear, her tumor had shrunk, and it disappeared. I mean, all kinds of just remarkable things that happen when people apply these energy techniques. So there are lots of stories at mindtomatter.com as well as that free book.
That is fantastic. In just a few minutes here with Dr. Dawson Church, author of Mind to Matter, here on the Mike Wagner Show. Love to have you back on. You've been fantastic. And just a few more things here. And what can we expect to be from 2020 and beyond?
I argue at the end of the book, and I'm writing a new book on this as well, is I think we're at the middle of an enormous leap in human evolution. And I argue in my books now, I used to be a really good Darwinian and think that evolution proceeded very, very slowly by means of natural selection. And that's what Darwin taught. And Darwin wrote that in our lifetimes, we'll never see evolution. I mean, it takes hundreds of generations for random mutation to produce, through natural selection, to produce genetic change. What I'm beginning to realize was I was totally wrong about that. And that what we're seeing now, like in chapter 1 of Mind to Matter, I have a story of a guy who did 8 weeks of meditation, and he went into a lab in week 1, week 0, and week 8 with a TV crew who was filming him. He was a TV producer, and they filmed him on this 8-week journey, filmed him in the lab before he began, after he ended 8 weeks, and parts of his brain grew by several percentage points in just 8 weeks of meditation, and his dentate gyrus, a little sliver of tissue that regulates emotion, so it makes you not be fearful, it makes you not be anxious or angry, upset or afraid. His dentate gyrus in his brain in 8 weeks grew by 22.8%.
Wow.
That is how quickly we're remodeling our brains. So we aren't evolving just by random mutation anymore. We're literally changing the structure, the anatomy. This isn't physiology. This isn't how we feel. Feeling good is great. Feeling better is nice. But you're becoming a more resilient person. And we're now having many people become more resilient. This is going to change the world in an incredibly positive way over the next century. So we have huge problems. We have climate change. We have global warming. We have overpopulation. We have degradation of our food supply. I'm not minimizing the problems humankind faces. What I am saying, though, is with much more emotionally regulated, much smarter brains, that we are literally able to evolve in real time in a matter of weeks, that this is going to produce a leap in human evolution and a leap in human well-being and a leap in planetary well-being such as we've never seen before in human history. That's what the next decades are going to bring.
And that's something to think about, and that's using your head, they say. So, and who do you consider your biggest influence in your career?
Well, I love books, and I love the people who commit their thoughts to books. So you know, go and buy a book for $20, just a little bit of money, and you can get the wisdom of a whole civilization sometimes. You get the wisdom of a great scientist, for example. So there have been several books that have really helped me and motivated me. Some of them are old books, like the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. 2,000 years ago, he was Roman emperor, and his meditations are a philosophy that still resonates today. Patanjali in India, again, hundreds of years ago, codified the Yoga Sutras. And so there are these brilliant thinkers and explainers of philosophy that are really influential to me. And then I went and lived on a spiritual community when I was 15 years old. So for a long time I've been immersed in this stuff, in energy healing and the great perennial philosophy. And so all those great thinkers of the past have really been a big influence on me. And then just in the last few years, there have been several brilliant science books written on neuroscience and the brain and applying these insights to our daily lives, like Andrew Newberg's book, How Enlightenment Changes Your Brain, an amazing book. And he talks about a lot of this research. And he and I talk in person sometimes as well about all of this. So all of these great scientists whose work we build on, but the great philosophers of the past, Jesus, Buddha, Moses in the Judaic tradition, and there, in India has traditions, the Bhagavad Gita and other scriptures. I mean, there's Confucius, Lao Tzu. There are all of these amazing people who are just handing us the benefit of a civilization's worth of wisdom. And so drink it in, be grateful that you're there, and then apply it. And what we're showing now is that, Mike, when you do this, you aren't changing a little bit. You are changing your brain, you're changing your gene expression, you're changing your longevity, you're changing your health dramatically. So that's really what my mission is to not just enjoy the stuff and bliss out myself, which I do every morning meditation, but then it's just to get on and share with people like you what this can do for others. And then I just want to see millions of people, again, not suffering unnecessarily. There's necessary suffering, there's inevitable suffering, but much of our suffering is just the result of not doing these few simple practices that can alleviate it. So that's really my message.
That's amazing as well, too. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
The answer is as close as your breath. Just changing your breath, changing your breathing is going to affect your well-being and de-stress you. So the best advice I have is start small and do things that work for you. In Mind to Matter, I list 30 practices. There's time in nature, there's Qigong and yoga, there's Tai Chi. There are just a lot of different things you could do. Should you do all 30? No one has time to do all 30. But you want to just experiment with a few of them, and the best one for you is the one you'll do. So I recommend you read the book, look at those 30 practices, and then pick one that matches your lifestyle. If you're a working mother and you have 3 kids and you're trying to deal with your kids and your job and your career and your relationships, then probably 2 hours of meditation every morning is not the best solution for you. But maybe 15, 20 minutes of meditation is doable. In fact, we have many people who have written into our website who said they began to do, like one woman I met at a live workshop a few weeks back said, I took your 30-day meditation challenge. And so I'm going to meditate for 30 days. And it just changed my life. She said, I began to feel joy. I began to see parts of my life changing that hadn't been changing before. And I asked her, well, of the 30 days, what day are you on right now? She said, oh, I'm on day 129. Wow. So what's happened is that she hasn't missed a day in 129 days because she's having all this dopamine in her brain, all this serotonin, all this anandamide. She's high on marijuana, cocaine, psilocybin, all of these analogous neurochemicals. They are so addictive, Mike. Once you start doing this stuff, no one has to tell you, to remind you to do it. You don't have to set an alarm and say, I'm going to make a New Year's resolution, I'm going to meditate. People become addictive meditators because it feels so good in their bodies. So that's the first thing to do, is to look at all 30 practices, pick the ones that you will commit to, like she did, saying for 30 days I will do this. When you do that, you're on what I call in my book, The Genie in Your Genes, the epigenetic health spiral. You feel better, so you do more of it. Your health improves, your mood improves, you feel even better, so you do more of it. Now, the stuff happens. The coronavirus happens, the riots happen, the financial crash happens, but you are resilient and you are used to feeling good now. So you get knocked down a little bit, but you pick yourself up and stay on that epigenetic health spiral, and you find yourself becoming happier and happier, healthier and healthier. And some really cool research I've got in my book shows that I asked myself, okay, do you reach a plateau? After people have done, say, 10,000 hours, do they stop evolving? And the answer is, we have some studies of the brains of people who've done 60,000 hours of meditation, and their brains are still evolving, and they're becoming happier and happier and happier still. Unlimited happiness. It's amazing.
Yes, that's right. You're a very happy man, Dr. Dawson Church. Author, Mind and Manner, Dr. Dawson Church. A big thank you for your time. You've been fantastic. I love your laugh, and it's just very inspiring. And once again, tell us about your upcoming projects, what's your website, how do people contact you, where can people purchase your books?
Go to mindbetter.com for that free book. I also have a new book that's coming out in about 6 months called Bliss Brain, and that's all about it's a really deep dive into the neurochemistry and all of those 7 neurochemicals of bliss, brain states you can acquire. And so Mind to Matter is about manifestation. Bliss Brain is about those elevated emotional states. And then my previous book, The Genie in Your Genes, is about epigenetics. So mindbetter.com is a good one. And then if you want to get a whole bunch of good links, go to Dawson, my name, Dawson Gift, GIFT.com, DawsonGift.com, because that's where you can get a free copy of the EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques Tapping Mini Manual. You can get access to free meditations that are really effective, that'll really shift you very, very quickly. You also get a whole bunch of other good links like the Veteran Stress Project and other resources. All of that's at DawsonGift.com. So Mind to Matter for the book, DawsonGift.com for just like certified practitioners. Like, for example, we have a platform called Tapping Place, and you go there, you can do tapping with a practitioner live whenever you want to. It's just 24/7. There's somebody standing by there. You just log on there, they'll tap with you in real time on whatever is bothering you. So there are a lot of good resources all available at DawsonGift.com.
That is fantastic. Again, Dr. Dawson, a big thank you for your time. You've been fantastic, very inspiring as well, too. Looking forward to having you again soon. Do us a favor, keep us up to date. Looking forward to have back on 2020 and beyond, and you've been great.
All the best. Thanks for sharing this.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Wagner Show, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. The Mike Wagner Show can be heard on Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Anchor FM, Radio Public, and themikewagnershow.com. Please support our program with your donations at themikewagnershow.com. Join us again next time for another great episode of The Mike Wagner Show.